Well, wasn't that some nice music? Here I'm going to show you just some parts that I used to build this hydroponic system. There's a battery, seen a pump there, tape, the solar panel of course, chemicals, expensive, yes. Some of the stuff I didn't even use, I bought too much, which was kind of a waste. The seed starting kit, good for next year, is on sale. pH tester. I'm just using 4-inch drainage pipe and drilled some holes in the top, capped off either end. And you can see in here I already got one of the fittings screwed in to the bottom. That's where the pump's going to pump in the water and fill it up. And yeah. That's pretty much it. The first time I did that it sprayed everywhere, so I had to cover it with that. I'm just testing the pump here. Turns on and you can see the water filling up. It fills up really quick. That drainage pipe came in 10-foot length, so I decided cut it in 5 foot, and I was just going to use the one 5-foot length, but I seen how well it pumped, so I decided I'd end up using both 5-foot lengths. And you can see when I turn the pump off that the water will drain from the pipe back into the reservoir just by its own. So that's that, but it will need an overflow to stop it from when it pumps too much. You don't want it spilling out everywhere, so you put in an overflow. You'll take a look at that later on, and it drains back into the reservoir. The timer system to operate the pump. Originally I thought I could do it with something like that, but that's a 120 volt timer, and I'm running a 12 volt system, so that wouldn't work. Even though the current's going through now, the power isn't enough to actually get for the timer to function. So my solution is here. These are thermostats, and they work with 12 volt systems. So that's what I'm using to turn on and off everything. Here's the fan. You'll see I'll turn down the temperature to cool it. You'll hear a click, bunk, and then the fan will turn on. So I'm going to have fans in my hydroponic greenhouse that I'm going to build for it. And then the other thermostat will operate the pump. But unfortunately with this thermostat I only get 4 settings per day I can program to. And here you'll hear it click and the pump will turn on. 4 per day that I can program it to. And so that means only 2 feed cycles per day. So I might break down and actually buy a 12 volt timer, even though they are expensive. But there you can see that that's all working. And the same thing to shut it off. I turn off the heater and it shuts off the fan and everything works. Here's just another look at it. There's the second 5-foot length of 4-inch. There's a little splitter on that connection, so the pump will now fill up both tubes with water. And yeah, it worked pretty good. You can see that one's filling, the other one's filling. This one's draining right now because I don't have the overflow properly in place, and yeah, works like a charm. And then I got that guy at Walmart, just a wireless remote thermometer, so I can tell what the temperature is in there. Everything drains, everything pumps right, so it's all looking good. Here I'm in the garage. I'm going to build a little stand for the tubing, and just notched it out there with the jigsaw. So then I threw some legs on it just like that, cut them at 30 degrees, makes a good little stand. So I'll do 2 of those and then brace them together with a 2x4, and presto, you have a little stand for your 4-inch cubes. Fit right on there, just like that, nice and easy. Then I moved it to the deck. There's my solar panel. This is going to be a solar powered operation with a little 12 volt rechargeable battery. Hopefully that'll be enough power for it to work. But you know, I'm testing it with a 5-gallon bucket. The 5-gallon was pretty much the perfect amount. It doesn't drain the reservoir completely, but it's a good amount for these tubes. So that's what I'd be running. You can see the drainage is hooked up together. You can hear it draining out. When it overflows, goes back into the reservoir, and the pump keeps on cycling the water through. works pretty good. There it is in there. You can see the overflow, each one. There's it all drains out. There's all the little trays in it with the clay pellets. They're good media for growing hydroponic stuff. You can use gravel, sand, newspaper, sawdust. I mean, there's a lot of things I guess you could use, but these seem to work the best. Like I said, I was going to put this hydroponic system inside a miniature greenhouse, so I'm going to build it out a base out of 2x6s, make it 4x8 wide. And so that's what I was doing, and then I braced the corners with some 2x4. And that's going to be the base for the greenhouse, and I'm going to build pretty much the same structure out of 2x4s, and that's going to go over top of that base. You can see the tubing I'm going to use to make the hoop house, to make a nice round arch over the top. It's a little flimsy, and I kind of had my doubts at first. I mean, it's cheap tubing, so I was trying to make use for it, and there it is together. It worked fine. I mean, I put some braces in the top and the sides, and it's actually ended up a lot more solid than I had thought, so I was pretty happy with that. I just anchored, nothing's really drilled to it. I mean, I can pop those tubes out anytime, so if I want to dismantle it before winter or something, it's not too hard. Here's the wiring, here's the fans. I ended up getting a couple bigger computer fans, and then there's a fan in the middle, and so when it gets too hot in there, the fans kick in. Even though I don't think they'll cool it too well, at least you'll get some circulation in there, and probably take some hot air out as well. They do move quite a bit. Covered it with plastic, and fans are going, so it's pretty quick and painless. Mounting the plastic was a bit of a challenge. I didn't want to staple it for it to rip, so I ended up getting these pieces of wood there that you see, rolled the plastic in it a few times, and then anchored it with a screw. And on the sides, I just took the same tubing that I did to use the hoops and cut it down the middle, little sections cut down the middle, and clamped it to the side. So that worked pretty good. And here's the hydroponics in there, the solar panel. Still kind of testing things out. And this is my reservoir, the 5-gallon bucket that I buried in the ground. Keeps it a little bit cooler and drains easier. Here's some chemicals, some of the chemicals I was using to grow. It's about $80 worth of chemicals, pH up, pH down, a little pH testing kit. Here's the reservoir full up with the chemicals added. You can see I covered all the clear tubing and added some tomato plants in there. Keep the light out so that no algae or anything grows in there, from what I know. I mean, this is my first time doing this, so I have no idea what the hell to expect. There's a little control center, and at 1 o'clock, things are supposed to, well, it has its feeding cycles. And here's the hinge. This is why I built 2 frames. I put hinges on the back, so instead of having to lift up the plastic or lift up the whole greenhouse, it's just easy with a hinge. You can open it up if it gets way too hot, air it out. Easy access to get in there and kind of tend to your plants. Here it is, 1 o'clock, click, turns on the pump, and things are working just fine. Everything pumping, draining, filling, so got a couple tomato plants, bean sprout. I'm just testing this out to see if it'll actually work. Probably end up killing those plants, but who knows, maybe I won't. It won't be a waste. But I think it's pretty neat. It's a little self-sufficient system, as long as it doesn't blow away. Here you can see the clamps on the side. It's just the same pipe, just clamped around. There's the fans. You can see inside there's a 3rd fan in the middle, and then another fan out, so it's all one direction. And that's about it. In a couple weeks I might make another video and do a little update on this to show you guys if it's actually working. So I decided to just list some materials and costs of the project, and originally I thought I'd be able to do it for really cheap, but one thing I realized when you start a project like this is how quickly just small things seem to add up. And then when you take into consideration buying the chemicals and I guess the thermostats for the timers were a huge expense. It was actually pretty expensive. Maybe that's where most of the cost was, but really it just adds up. So if you're thinking of doing it yourself, you're going to want a bit of cash, I guess, on hand. For me, I guess it costed $403 roughly to do this thing, and that's quite a bit of money.